state. Tonight, they went off to war like heroes.
We got the weight of a flag on our shoulders. We're untouchable.
But once you get over there, it's nothing like that.
Now, more and more Canadians are returning from Afghanistan with a wound no one can see, a wound that for so long no one wanted to acknowledge.
Nobody wants to be broken in the Army. Nobody. Nobody wants to be weak.
I'm no longer Dave. You're now Dave with PTSD.
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. For veterans and their families, a new kind of battle, potentially just as deadly, begins once they're home. And did you feel threatened?
I thought he could hurt me.
Canada's top soldier says more is being done to help.
Where we are today is not where we were 5 or 10 years ago.
West, south, and north. Roger.
But another soldier, still living with his own demons, worries it's not good enough.
This injury, PTSD, leads to suicide in extreme. I tried it 4 times.
Hello and welcome. I'm Gillian Findlay. It is the invisible wound of war. Our parents and grandparents knew it as shell shock. Today, we use acronyms like OSI and PTSD. Whatever it's called, though, the reality is that hundreds, maybe thousands of Canadian military personnel are coming home from Afghanistan in one piece physically, but in pieces psychologically, overloaded by the sights and sounds of what they've seen and done. Over the years, our generals have been slow to recognize this injury. Now new leadership is putting treatment programs into place. But one of Canada's most respected soldiers warns from his own searing experience that those who come home wounded in ways we cannot see could be facing a long-term battle, one that has a body count all its own. Tonight, Canadian veterans of Afghanistan share their candid and troubling stories, and General and Senator Romeo Dallaire on why it's so important that we listen.
A bunch of my family's been in the military. Grandfather, uncle, great uncle, you know.
22-year-old Dave Hawkins lives in St. Thomas, Ontario. To hear his parents tell it, he was destined to serve.
But ever since he was 8 years old, he dressed up as a military guy, if you will, and went out for Halloween. So we always kind of thought this was something he would do.
He joined the reserves in high school, thinking if not the military, then maybe a career in policing or firefighting. Either way, a stint in Afghanistan would be valuable experience.
You know, sign up for a tour, go overseas, actually do something. You see the movies and stuff like that, and you always wish it was like that. But once you get over there, it's nothing like that.
Dave landed in Kandahar last fall, attached to what the military calls a quick reaction force. They're the guys who go at the first sign of trouble and see the most troubling things.
If anything happened outside the wire, like someone found an IED or someone blew up from an IED, you'd have to go to that situation. You want to get there as quick as possible, but at the same time, you want to make sure you can get there alive.
For a kid who'd only ever seen war on a video screen, it was stressful. Riding around in the back of a convoy knowing that at any moment, something could explode.
You don't know who your enemy is, really. When you're driving down the road, it's out of your control whether you blow up or not. You kind of got to sit in the back of the vehicle and cross your fingers.
When something did happen, Dave says it was the additional stress of waiting. For commanders, sometimes kilometers away, to give permission to fight.
They just killed 2 guys right in front of us. Let's do something about this. We can see them. We know where they are. Let's go get them. I think that's one of the hardest things you can possibly do, is just watch and not do anything about it.
Hello?
Back at home, Dan Hawkins tweaked early on that his son was struggling. Dave didn't say much in his weekly phone calls home. He didn't have to.
I don't know. It's just an odd thing between Dave and I. We have this really weird bond. It's It's almost like even though he was all those thousands of miles away, I could feel what he was feeling. It's weird.
Well, when did you first realize that
December.
things were not going well, yeah?
December.
What happened?
Well, we phoned him, and he was so down. He didn't even want to go for dinner with the rest of his troops. He just wanted to sit in his room. I knew then that I wasn't getting the same guy back.
What Dave remembers is exhaustion.
I wasn't sleeping. I was eating crappy. I'd stay up till like 2, 3 in the morning. I'd go to bed for maybe about an hour and a half at best. And then I'd be back up and I'd have to do the same thing the next day.
But then came the day just after Christmas. Dave's best friend in Afghanistan, a soldier with whom he'd shared basic training, went out in one of those convoys with Dave. The friend didn't make it back.
He's probably about 3, 4 vehicles in front of us, but I'd say about 10 vehicles in front of him went over the same spot and nothing happened, and then all of a sudden, you know, stuff happens. All the guys came out of the vehicle, out of the back, and they were all covered with smoky dust and everything else, and I was looking at the faces through the binoculars, seeing if I could pinpoint which guy was. I thought they all got out at first, and then I realized there was one man short, and I knew who it was, and right then I was, you know, kind of sank.
Back in St. Thomas, Dan sank too, and did the only thing he could think of. He got on the phone and he didn't stop dialing until he'd finally connected with someone in Afghanistan who could help.
I found out the name of a padre who was in the same area as David, and I got a hold of him, and I said, I want you to find my son. I talked to him.
That was a big step for me. That took me to go to actually talk to someone. The hardest step I could possibly have done.
Why was it so hard?
Because you feel like you shouldn't have to. You feel like you should be stronger than that. You know? Like you're a soldier, you know? You're gonna see stuff like this. You're gonna do stuff like this. Right? Soldier on type deal.
It's the pressure that's always been on soldiers. Every war has had its PTSD casualties, although it wasn't always called that. Nostalgia, soldier's heart, shell shock. It was never an honorable diagnosis, and through the years, few soldiers got anything resembling treatment. It wasn't until Vietnam that the idea that minds could be just as vulnerable as bodies in war was widely recognized. But those veterans returned home to a country at war with itself over their contribution. The depression, the homelessness, the suicides that followed were often explained by that. So in 2002, when Jeff Gravel came home from Afghanistan, PTSD wasn't even on his radar. He'd been among the first Canadians deployed, working in the mountains shoulder to shoulder with the Americans, chasing Al-Qaeda. For a soldier whose only previous experience had been peacekeeping in Bosnia, it didn't get better than that.
Time of my life.
Yeah, and what did you think you were going to do?
We just suited up for the big game. But all of a sudden, we've got the all-star jerseys on. We've got 30 pounds of coolness on our chest. We've got a Kevlar helmet with night vision attachments. At the time, it was the best place in the world to be.
And when they came home, they were heroes, treated to their own parade down the streets of Edmonton. Jeff's unit was singled out for special commendation, and it all cemented his decision to make the military his career.
You're living almost like a rock star high. You're totally removed from everything that you hated because all you wanted to do was come home. And then when you got home, everything was great because you were the hero, you made it home, everyone's proud that you're home, everyone's happy you're home. And then the very next thought is, well, Johnny's not here. You know, Johnny would like to have seen this. You know,
and who was your...
Billy would like to have been home. Ainsworth, Dyer, Jordan, Anderson, there's several, Aaron Doyle. We buried him last year.
Yeah, these are the guys you think of?
Oh, yeah, constantly.
Yeah.
A bad day, I'll stay in the basement. I'll stay closed up with the blinds drawn. I won't leave the house. Maybe I'll drink a bottle.
It was the beginning of a downward spiral, accelerated by the pain of having survived. People talk about survivor's guilt.
Yep.
Is that something that plagues you?
I've heard tell of it. I've heard tell of it from my doctors. I think maybe.
What's the guilt that you live with?
Why them, not me? They had a lot to live for, too. I made a lot of mistakes in my life that maybe had they been given the chance, maybe they would have just led a good, clean life and been something to honor. Maybe I made a tarnish for that memory. There's a lot of pressure to do good by them, to do good in their memory, to make sure their memory doesn't die, and to not make an ass of yourself while you're doing it.
Like generations of soldiers before them, Jeff and his war buddies found their release in the bottle and in drugs.
Cocaine became easy to get. I mean, if you wanted a joint, it would take 2 hours. If you wanted cocaine, it would be there in 10 minutes. The whole social circle fell into it. We were all part of it. It was a coping mechanism. What was it you were trying to sort of bury at that point? I mean, what were the emotions that you didn't want to... The hurt, the guilt. With us, such strong kids, such fit, healthy, and to lose them at such a young age, adds a different trauma to the whole incident. It really attacks your sense of invincibility, because we're supposed to be invincible, right? It was that pressure to be invincible that stood between Jeff and treatment for years. He knew he was falling apart. The soldier in him wouldn't ask for help. Why didn't you? Why did you not want to? Because I'm a grown man. I knew what I was doing. I got my airborne wings. I'm Army. I'm a sergeant. What do you know? What do you know that I don't know? I'm in command of 8 men in a combat zone. How are you going to tell me how to function that night? When we come back, battling PTSD on the home front.
Maybe playing with a toy, and it'd be something that beeps or blinks or something, and the third time I told them, stop that. Gimme. Problem solved. Go away.
Of all those who serve in Afghanistan, the military estimates 6% will experience some kind of mental trauma. They call it OSI, Operational Stress Injury. And this summer, Canada's new Chief of the Defence Staff announced that fighting the stigma around mental injuries will be among his highest priorities.
That's why we're making this broad appeal to everyone who wears the uniform to step up, to be the difference, to support our comrades. We need to make every effort to support the mental well-being of our men and women. Let's do our part, wherever you are in this organization, to be the difference for those who we truly care for.
But to make a difference, General Walter Natinchik is under no illusions. It's a very proud culture that has to change.
We permeate the culture, that kind of warrior culture, where we want people to be warriors. We want them because they have to go into harm's way at sea, at 40,000 feet in the air, or in places like Afghanistan. We need that. We need them to be adventurous. We need them to be strong of heart. But at the same time, we need them to be accepting the fact that we're not all, in armor suits, and that when we do have a problem, that they go in for assistance.
How the message is delivered and by whom is important, which is why among the military's initiatives is expanding a program of peer counseling.
Is it a huge step? Maybe not, but it's definitely steps in the right direction. Yeah.
Where soldiers who have PTSD help others understand what they're up against. It was at such a support group in Windsor, Ontario, that we met Corporal Matt Salter.